You've come to the right place if you're looking to create, launch, and scale a high-value online training program. I'm your guide, Chris Badgett. I'm the co-founder of LifterLMS, the most powerful learning management system for WordPress. Stay to the end. I've got something special for you. Enjoy the show. Hello and welcome back to another episode of LMS Cast. I'm joined by a special guest. Her name is Cate Stillman. She's from yogahealer.com. Welcome to the show, Cate.
Hey, thanks, Chris. Glad to be here.
When did your journey as what I call an education entrepreneur, somebody who felt a calling to help people, particularly online, when did that start for you? What year were we at?
Yeah, so I started, it depends how we define online. So I started a website and a constant contact, if you remember those guys, email, basically like email blog type of conversation with my audience in 2001 in San Francisco. And our first online course was 2007.
That's cool. That's cool. How did you, sometimes I know a lot of health and wellness people myself. How did you bridge that gap? Sometimes there's this divide between like the business world and like the health and healing world. Like, how did those really kind of come together for you, particularly with online? Was there a major influence or something that helped you see the opportunity to kind of reach the world?
I think so. When I would look back of like, why was it a little easier for me? And I don't want to say that the entrepreneurial journey is easy for anyone. Just to be clear, my dad was a computer guy,
Okay.
and so he was a software. He was like in the early days, like hardware, then software development, and then basically those companies that he was working with were global. So he was traveling to Asia and turning around offices there, and so I just was like, we always had a computer. I knew that if I telecommuted. This was funny when I was working in Washington D.C. and global warming, climate change politics before I went into wellness. And I went into wellness because I quickly realized that being in politics and policy to try to help humans become more conscious that we live on one planet, and that we should figure out how to do that better, led me to consciousness studies, which really led me into wellness. But I got my first telecommuting job because I had a laptop, because my dad was like, here, you can, if that's all you need to be able to live where you want and do what you want. And that was in 1996. So I was pretty early to the getting that if you had an internet connection and a computer and a good, and just wanted to be useful to people, that you could do something. And I think that helped a lot. That mindset helped a lot.
Tell us about that first course in 2007. I think you said, like, what technology did you use? What did you make it about? How'd you decide to do it? Was this your first dollar on the internet kind of thing here?
That's a good question. Was that my first dollar on the internet? I don't know. I was charging $1,000, and it was the Living Ayurveda course. We still teach this course today, and it's for really people who want to heal themselves through Ayurveda and want to go on a healing journey. I had been traveling around the U.S. teaching workshops at yoga studios, and people just were very connected to my very practical way of teaching ancient wisdom to modern humans. And so they just wanted more. And I was like, oh, I'll teach. And I was in an online course with Sally Kempton, who was an enlightenment teacher the year before. So I just basically did what she did, which was like, I think we used a Ning forum.
Okay.
Or we may have eventually migrated to a Ning forum. I think we used like teleconference HD, high def phone lines. Before we then went to Maestro conference. This was all pre-Zoom. And I think we used a Google Doc. Something like that. Or we were moving PDFs around from Word docs, that kind of thing. It was pretty rough. Shared book list really helped, where we were reading the same things and then talking. I don't think we had, I think that was it. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. For somebody who's like, most people know what yoga is, but what if you're kind of priming somebody on the expertise area of Ayurveda, like how do you kind of frame that in for somebody?
Well, right now the way I do it is different than in the past. So right now, I'm a macro thinker, so I'm always looking again at like the biggest biggest problems, biggest picture, biggest hurdles people are up against. And right now, people are up against a lot. I mean, really, it's if we just look at the rise of chronic disease driven by chronic inflammation in the last 100 years, even the last 60 to 80 years, chronic inflammation was not a thing 100 years ago. So people were dying of acute inflammation, acute problems. And so the way that I explain Ayurveda is it's basically the habits that you need that will, and they seem really counterculture right now because culture is conventional. Culture has the habits of chronic disease. And so what Ayurveda is, it's a very simple toolkit to restore your human design. And these habits they're the ancient habits of circadian rhythm. The yogis were really into enlightenment, and Ayurveda is the healing system that co-arose with yoga. So it's how do you live in an enlightened lifestyle? How do you live in an enlightened way? So you get to experience the full technology of being a human being, which is the most advanced technology that we've found so far.
Wow, that's awesome. I do have a little background in it. I spent a little time in the Himalaya and I studied a little bit of Ayurveda when I was over there, but I'm very much a beginner, but I'm really curious, like, how do you bridge the gap when you take something from, I might say the ancient world or a different world? I mean, Ayurveda is alive and well, to like a culture that's not familiar with it. Like, it's hard enough to teach something, but to teach something that's like feels really foreign to somebody, how do you bridge that gap as a macro thinker and as someone who has to meet somebody where they are?
Yeah, I mean, I really look for what matters most to them and what habits are most out of alignment if they turn that habit around, that they'll feel the best. So it's all based on personal interest. Like people are actually fairly motivated to do what they want to do, right? And like if they want to feel better and they just don't have there's so much complexity, and it's intentional, the amount of complexity that's in allopathic medicine. It's incredibly hard to figure out what's really going on for yourself. And, the thing about it is Ayurveda is you look at the whole person. And so it's pretty easy from a whole person perspective, sorry about that, to figure out like what's really going on and what change can they make that's so easy where they're going to actually start to feel better within 24 hours. And that's really what I look like. How do you make it relevant to the person like right now to start to repair their intuition? Because in a healthy person, and it's hard to even define what that is right now because there is so much inflammation. I mean, something around 28% of children in America are on pharmaceuticals right now. So that's a lot. Which means that they're on pharmaceuticals for chronic conditions, not for acute conditions. So that means there's a high likelihood that these children will have more and more. Usually if someone's on one medication for chronic disease, that they'll be on more within a few years. So these people will be medicated their whole lives. And it's really hard to live intuitively. So what we try to do is really restore someone's natural intuition so that they can just navigate life and take on more of what they're designed to take on. I mean, life is supposed to be full of positive stressors, and we turn that on for people like they can, make sense more quickly. I am using fewer and fewer of the words in Sanskrit to answer your question in a word. And what I find is that because of chronic inflammation, and this totally sucks, Chris, but cognitive function decreases. So neuroplasticity decreases. So people have a harder time learning new things. So to bring in concepts and language from another culture, a foreign culture, it's harder now than it was 20 years ago. Where it's like, I'm just trying to like put things in plain English as much as possible. And yeah, what I'm teaching is ancient wisdom. And yeah, I can back it up with these terms from these ancient texts and I can put it in another language, but it's so not helpful for so many people right now. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it did. Yeah, very much so. Very much so. I appreciate that. For you and also for the listener, I consider you what I call an education entrepreneur. And the challenge which you've pulled off successfully is I have a framework called the 5 hats that you have to wear in yourself and with your team: being an expert, being a community builder, being a teacher, being a technologist, and being an entrepreneur. And it's really hard to like pull all that off. And you've clearly done that. Before we leave the expert area, like this subject matter expertise of Ayurveda and what's going on in the world today,
Yeah.
what are kind of like the top 3 kind of chronic inflammation, just kind of core problems that maybe not everybody has all three, but really like these three problems are the biggest challenges that Ayurveda helps to address, whether it's like leaky gut or toxic environment or cortisol. Like, what is it? Like, what are, from a macro view, what are the top three stressors causing all this inflammation?
Overfed. I'd say I mean, we could just talk about one.
Okay. That's great. That's great.
So if I was talking to someone about this last night, I'm like, if people could just eat less frequently, like it really is just that simple. This is wild. I did an interview with Mark Mattson, who he's a NIH. He used to run a department at NIH on basically on intermittent fasting, and in his research, the human brain has shrunk 10% in 10,000 years. So when we're talking about decrease of cognitive function, like there's a lot of things that happened when we stopped moving to find food and fasting. And so when someone is, and again, there's everyone's trying to sell you something right now that's in like health and wellness, or so it seems. Like I'm trying to sell you wisdom. That's about it. Like I am not into products. Like I am not into supplement. I am not into stuff. It's like help people fast longer. Period. Their children, their teens, their elders, like just return to just allowing the fasted state, because the fasted state allows for autophagy. And autophagy is where the cells start to clean house. They start to basically digest what is broken within them, and they upcycle. Like the whole body is actually much more of a closed system than an open system. We're insanely resilient and adaptable if we just allow the natural physiology. So in general, people are eating too frequently. And because we're eating too frequently, we stretch our stomachs out and then we eat too much, because that feeling of fullness is that feeling of reward, which is great. I mean, satiation is the pulsation between hunger and satiation. Like we need that. But if we don't experience hunger at the level of a fat cell being totally depleted and what's called lean down, right, then we don't actually experience satiation. And it messes, then it has a cascade effect of the whole endocrine system. So then you're going to see issues all over the place. I mean, whether it's wild, actually, like the fat cells that are too fat, that are too full, produce these antibody reactions that basically create autoimmune disorders. But they do all these other sorts of things. They can disrupt any endocrine gland. And so it's just the simplest things of like, just start experiencing pulsation. The way you do that is you fast for longer. So most people don't know, what it's like to just eat one meal a day. I mean, it's such a simple concept. Like just eat one meal a day, a couple days a week. It's as simple as that, really. Like just that will return the intuition, and then people will get, oh my gosh, I'm tired. Okay, I should go to sleep. Okay, I want to see what dawn is like. Okay, I should get up earlier. I should go to bed early to wake up earlier. Anyone struggling with anxiety and depression, like if you just do those things, fast longer, go to bed earlier, wake up before the dawn, witness the dawn of a new day, it'll start to rebalance your mind body.
Wow, that's awesome.
That's all we do at Yoga Healer, basically. It's like help people, because what we found is that the biggest problem with this, Chris, is that our habits are not our own. Our habits they're communal. And so we have to hang out with people that are healthier habits. I mean, I know you know this with entrepreneurs. It's like if you just hang out with people who are smaller, doing a smaller size business than you are, it's really hard to grow. But if you start hanging out with people playing a bigger game, like you've got people you can ask questions to that can shortcut giving you advice. It's the same thing with wellness. Like hang out with people that have better habits. And that's essentially what we create, is like these communities where someone can come in as a shit show and they can up level really, really fast because the community is operating at such a high level.
That's awesome. Well, one more question on this, and this is not medical advice. I'm just sharing my experience and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I just have a question for you. I've done a lot of fasting work. I've done like a 3-week fast, even with water only, and the refeeding on the other sides and all that, like real serious version. I've also done the intermittent stuff. And then, I've done, as I worked up to the big fast, I did a lot of like juice fasting and shorter fast periods. But like if you're just going to set a rhythm for somebody who's somewhat, mid-level experience with it, what's the best way to do it? Like, in terms of like on the weekly basis and also on the annual basis? Like,
Yeah.
is it healthy to have a longer term fast, like 4 times a year, or once a year,
Mhm.
or do intermittent, or eat one meal a day? Like what's like the baseline like option that you might throw out there for somebody that kind of has the mind to do it?
Yeah. So in classical Ayurveda, there's dinacharya and ritucharya. So dinacharya is the daily rhythm, and ritucharya is the seasonal rhythm. So you're totally clued in to like, there's clearly like a day-to-day thing, and then there's clearly there's like a higher pattern above that, and then above that is the time of life. So you're looking at three
Yeah.
different rhythms, like the daily rhythm, the seasonal rhythm, and then the time of life rhythm. So daily rhythm, what you're looking at is autophagy, or the cell's ability to do any repair work, right? So it's not just putting load on the system, but it's actually taking load off the system, happens after you haven't eaten for 13 hours. So that's when it's like game on. So most people who are just trying to do like, what's my baseline, will do a 16-8 most of the time. So they get 3 hours of autophagy a day, and then an 8-hour feed rhythm. And that works for a lot of people who are just starting out, who it's like, say family dinner is at, 6 p.m. They might break their fast at, 11 a.m. and do like 11 to 7 as their feed window. Now, metabolic flexibility is really important even with a daily rhythm. So you don't want to do that all the time. You want to extend it more and start to play with 18/6s, or having, again, 5 hours of autophagy if it's 13 plus 5 to 18, in a 6-hour eating window. So those days you might not break your fast until 1 p.m. and then be done eating at 7 p.m. And then what'll happen is you'll notice, oh, some days I want to break the rules. Great, that's actually really good. And it's good to have 14/10s, where it's like some days you only have 1 hour of autophagy. That's it. And what this metabolic flexibility does is it increases your adaptability. What I have found with people that want to see how good they can feel is doing a couple days a week where they just do, like just a 1 meal a day. And you can drink black coffee, you can drink water, and then that's it. And what happens is that the stomach retracts, it shrinks really hard. The fat cells actually can pulsate back, and that's what you want. You want dynamic pulsation. So then the seasonal rhythm is usually the change from hot season to cold season to hot season. And in those times, there's naturally what I call the food blahs, where you just are like, I don't know what to eat. Nothing tastes great. Everything's kind of the same. And that's what's telling you that your body wants to take an opportunity to go a little bit deeper into autophagy. So at those seasonal junctures, doing something like, if we talk in fasting language, it would be like an FMD, which is a fast mimicking diet, which is really like calorie restriction for a certain period of time. And you're just trying to maximize autophagy. Dr. Walter Longo did a bunch of research on this, and he basically found that it's like the 500 to 650 calories a day, males, 650, females, 500, for about 5 days, is a really good deep reset where you're actually able to digest some, basically cancer cells in your body and cells that have gone malignant. You're able to digest the folded mitochondria within cells, which are your energy centers, so you get a really deep energetic reset. And then what I have found happens, we do a 3-week Yogi Detox twice a year. We do it in April and October every year as a community. And some people will do, more serious things like FMD, but some people will just kind of actually get into a better eating rhythm and get into a better sleeping rhythm and just nurture themselves for a couple of weeks. And that sort of reset is just hugely rejuvenating to the spirit. And it also starts to show a person what's optional. Like, what are they actually opting into with their habits in terms of how they feel? How much do they have control over? And to me, that's really the biggest reason to do those seasonal resets, is actually see what you're punishing yourself with and see how easy you can make your life, because it's that which is really going to change the trajectory of how you age in the decades to come. And to me, that's the biggest thing that those seasonal up cycles do.
Wow, that's awesome. Is there any quick comments? I think you mentioned the season of life, like how,
Yeah.
like as that relates, like, and what are those
Yeah.
break points?
Yeah, so the kapha stage of life, or the building anabolic stage of life, is from preconception. So your parents' cells making your first cell, right? It starts there, and it goes to about young adulthood. And then young adulthood through the metabolic time of life, which is about 20 to 60. It's interesting, like human metabolism stays relatively the same from 20 to 60 years old. Activity level changes, which is why we need often less food as we get older, because we just don't move around as
Right.
much. Even if you notice, like, I was watching this, I was at a gymnastics meet this weekend with my daughter, and there was a little 3-year-old, and like, I could not believe, like, she could not sit still for like half a second. She's on the bleachers and then off the bleachers and over here and then over there, and then she's upside down and then she's right. That's like being 3. And you look at a 60-year-old and they like can literally sit in the same position for like 5 hours looking at a screen without a problem. And feel get up, take a little walk. We move more efficiently as we age. So that's the pitta or metabolic phase of life. And then the catabolic phase of life, the vata phase of life, is usually around 60 to 100. And that time of life is where massive efficiencies increase and ability to transmit deeper wisdom. So you lose certain abilities with senses in an external way, and you gain insight. You gain the inner senses, so you get like much more deep time, deep space perspective in that phase of life when you optimize for that.
Wow, that's cool. Thanks for that. I could keep going forever about that stuff. That's awesome. Let's transition over to Cate and Yoga Healer, the entrepreneur, and the kind of like the education stack. Just for somebody who's just to get a feel for what you offer. You have courses in terms of, we'll talk about marketing in a second, but for stuff that people can buy, you've got courses and coaching, I believe. Like, what's in your stack? Like, what's the offer? Like, or what kind of offers do you have after being in business for, I think, 20 years?
Yeah, it's like we always say, like, we can't kill a course around here. And it's because it's community driven, and it's very grassroots organic in the way that the ecosystem of the curriculums arose. So it's all out of people. I mean, I think a lot of the educators here get it. It's like, you don't have to come up with stuff because people ask you for what they want. They ask you the right questions, and then you're like, oh, this is exactly what they need right now. So it started with Yogi Detox in 2002, and that's our 3-week crash course. I added Living Ayurveda course, and I was a practitioner in those early 2000s. So I had a yoga studio. I was an Ayurvedic practitioner. So I had like sort of the typical business as usual, hang a shingle type of shop. And then in 07, Living Ayurveda course. Now that, do you want the time frame and the prices? Does that help people listening?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So right now, Living Ayurveda course is $7,500. It's a year, and it's the healing journey. We get a lot of people that have, want to get to the bottom of their autoimmune problems, people that want to get to the bottom of adrenaline addiction, people that have cancer, people that are like, they're not doing well, and they want to take responsibility for their own health journey and their own body wisdom. And so we walk them through a healing journey with the first year Ayurveda curriculum that's offered at like most Ayurveda colleges, but they get to do it for themselves, and they get to do it for their families. So we'll even get parents in there whose kids have chronic health issues, and they're just like, I want to get my kids off the meds. Like, what do I need to get? What do I need to understand? What do I need to know? And then out of that, I started doing well in business, right? So then all the yoga teachers are like, what are you doing? And so then I was like, oh, well, I basically teach habits. I teach people the dinacharya, the daily habits of yogis, because when a client would come to me and they'd have all these symptoms, and they'd have all these health issues, and they'd have a bag of supplements and a bag of medication, like I'd have all this stuff. And I would just look at like, what habit is most out of rhythm? Is it the fasting time? Is it the bedtime routine? Is it they don't meditate? Is it that they don't have a good movement practice? Like, is it that they don't understand how to take care of their sense organs and protect their mind? Like, what are the issues? And so I got really clued into what, actually in 2000, I started teaching a workshop in San Francisco called Daily Routines of a Yogi. And it was just the Dinacharya crash course. It was a 2-hour, I gave everyone like, this is all they need, right? Even though it's really hard to do these habits, because modern culture does everything opposite to what these habits are. And again, we're creatures of habit, and our cultures are communal. So it's really hard to change your habit. So then that became a coaching course, like how to coach people through the habits. And I left out the business model. The next year we brought in the business model of this is how you actually lead the journey. This is how you actually market. This is how you sell. And that became Yoga Health Coaching, which is now going through a rebranding because we work with so many different types of wellness pros. They don't have to be into yoga or Ayurveda at all. We work with nurses, we work with doctors, we work with energy healers, we work with, everybody, trainers, nutritionists. And it's the same deal. Everyone's got chronic inflammation. These habits work for that. Let's show you how to teach it, lead a dynamic group, because if you get a group of people that have better habits, it's easier for any new member that comes in. But that started in 2012. Right now, that is a $15K investment. It's a 1-year certification program, and then we give them a bonus year of support, because what we've found is that it takes about 2 years for people to change their business model completely. And that's really what we're trying to help our wellness pros with, is like, what is a sustainable lifestyle for you, where you're actually leading the way, you're leading by example, you're not stressed out because you're trying to figure out list growth and Facebook marketing and all that, but you're like really focused on guiding a group of people across the finish line so that they have these habits for life. So Body Thrive then came, where I had to demonstrate the model, right? Because they're like, we want to see you do this, because I didn't have the course I was teaching them to teach. So then Body Thrive came after that. We still charge the same amount for that. It's $5K, it's a year, and it's our habits course. These are the daily habits. It's very innovative, it's very cutting edge, but we also take people who know nothing and are about, how to have a better experience in their body. They may be 100 pounds overweight, or they might come in with 3 autoimmune diseases and they don't want to learn Ayurveda. They just want to feel better now. And so they'll go into Body Thrive. And in that, we're demonstrating to the health coaches that we're coaching, like, this is how we do this. So that's been going nonstop since 2013. And then I decided to combine all the stuff I was learning from the business strategy, because I love business strategy. I really love business strategy. I love the idea, like, you have a problem, there's a strategic way to think about it. So I unfolded the 5-element theory of Ayurveda into basically how to take a strategic approach to whatever you're trying to do in your life or in your business. And I wrote a new book and created a new course called Master of You. And that's our course for, like, people who have a bigger dream, they haven't figured out how to do it. And it's also for entrepreneurs who know they're missing a piece. Maybe it's the family piece, maybe it's the home piece, maybe it's the health piece, maybe it's the strategy piece, maybe it's the how do I fit all the things together piece, and that's the Master of You course. $15K as well. Like, they do it in a year, they get a bonus year, because we know it actually takes a year to automate the system. So I teach systems. Once you have the system automated, you don't really have to think about it again. It's just part of how you think.
Wow, that's amazing. That's quite the journey. And also, with 2 markets, you're talking about wellness pros and individuals on a healing journey.
Yeah.
And it sounds like the people kind of pull the products out of you. Like, they tell you what to make, or you get the sense.
Well, and by personality profile, I'm a futurist.
Yeah.
So I'm high in openness in my, like, psychology breakdown. So I'm, like, really not, I have very low filters, right? So someone comes with an idea and if I don't know about it, I'm like, catch me up, like, get me up to speed. And so then that often pivots the community. So we really teach a collaborative intelligence model within our dynamic groups, which is all part of the coaching model that we teach. It's like, how do you activate a dynamic groups? Groups move way faster than individuals. If you can activate collaborative intelligence in a dynamic group, it gets really fun, really fast, and people get totally lit up and activated, and they can start to then bring those tools into their other relationships and make all their relationships dynamic.
That's awesome. Wow. A quick, small tactical question, because I see wellness pros get hung up on this one. How do you create courses and coaching and things like that and kind of navigate the legality of, like, delivering this information online? Do you know what I'm trying to ask here? Like, in terms of, like, medical disclaimer or coaching, not primary care or whatever, like, how do you deliver that and not get yourself into trouble? Or what should you not do that you can do in, like, a private practice setting, but not through an information product kind of thing?
Oh my gosh, it's like I should have a really good answer to this. First
Yeah.
of all, carry insurance.
Yeah.
Right? I think, what is it? CPH, I think, is a good one. Know your scope of practice for who you are and what you do, and really understand what that is and how you give advice. I mean, one of the things that I often say is, like, this is, if it were me, this is what I would do. So I'm not telling a person what to do.
You're not prescribing per se.
Yeah, and I'm not prescribing.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We never really talk about medications, except for we share results of our people who start doing certain habits and then find that when they talk to their doctor, they don't need as much medication. That's like, or they don't need to be on the medication anymore. That's like a really sort of typical story around our neck of the woods. Uh, but yeah, we're so habit driven that like, I mean, in what we're telling people to do is what everyone's grandmother knew. It's not, I mean, not everything, but a lot of it is that right now. And again, we're super innovative, right? And we're super high in openness. I'm releasing a couple books. The first one that's coming, the next one that's coming out is called Wild Habits. And in there's a number of habits that are based on urine therapy, which is basically I can't not find it in indigenous cultures or First People cultures or in holistic medicine cultures. It's like, it's everywhere. Where people used to upcycle their pee. Like again, we're much more of a closed system. So right now we're talking to other urine therapists and finding out some of the legalities around that. Because if you Google urine, it'll say it's a waste product. So that's the party line that Google's serving up right now, which is, it's so unfortunate because like urine is the most studied compound out of the human body, but it's not studied in a way that's helps people understand what it actually is and what those components actually do. So in that book, I try to really break down the science behind why why it shows up in every indigenous form of medicine, how other mammals use it, and what we're sort of missing if we don't get it. But I would say I walk that line, you know? I definitely walk that line. I think for that reason, if we just talk about like, if you're afraid of getting sued, don't hold a lot of capital in your company. I hold a lot of capital in other places outside of my company because I get that. I mean, if there was ever a witch to be burned on a stake, like I'm a prime target. I'm very edgy, you know, and so that's one of the ways that I handle it. I carry insurance. I don't keep a ton of capital in my company. I have a good LLC, I have good legality protection based on that, and I advise people based on habits.
That's awesome. I appreciate you sharing that. Let's look at marketing with a beginner's mind. I mean, you have this amazing 20-year career and this big YouTube channel, all this stuff. Um, what I bet YouTube has been pretty big for you, I'm guessing, but
No, I mean, actually, I don't know. I mean, like to me, Chris, like the shiny object syndrome, the way things have changed so much in 20 years is like every time the tools get easier, the market expands.
okay.
Right. So like one of our market advantages over time was that we were just good with tech. Like we could just do things that other people do. And I'm really, pretty sharp at like, let's hire someone to figure this out that we can't figure out kind of thing. So it's like, as everything got way more sort of centralized, easy, online companies for dummies kind of thing, we sort of lost a lot of advantage. I think too, for me, like for those of you who are authors out there and are writing high quality books that require a lot of research, the amount of time that goes into that it's insane. And all of that time could be spent marketing. So all that time could be used to optimize YouTube or optimize Facebook or optimize Instagram or optimize LinkedIn.
So is that a cautionary tale about going into the book too soon versus?
No, I'm not going to say it is, because if you truly, what a book will do, and I think the person who's articulated this really well is Jordan Peterson, and he talks about how in Maps of Meaning, like he wrote every sentence 50 times, like the amount of neuroplasticity that you will gain, your ability to articulate, your ability to debate, to drive an idea, to do research, to actually figure out what you think, that is what happens in a book. And if you can get good at that, I mean, I've blockchained like this whole publishing process so that we can own all of our content, we can illustrate it. Like some of my issues with publishers is like they won't put as many, I'm a huge fan of visual learning. Like I'm always drawing on my pad while I'm teaching. Like I know people cannot listen to two talking heads for more than 5 minutes. Like in 5 minutes is a really long time. So even in my books, I get it with reading, like you have to, like for my people to be able to communicate these ideas, and I have coaches trying to communicate these ideas to their people, a picture's worth 1,000 words. And the people that are really individual thinking, one of the things that they discovered is it's like you can give the same lecture, right, to a group of people, And if you share like one image, 1,000 people will agree on what the image was, but they won't agree on what the lecture was about. But they can all recreate that same image. So in my new book, Wild Habits, I don't even know how many images there are. I think there's 80. Right? And so we're just doing it in a way that we're able to produce. And so one of the things that I look at now when I write a book, if this was visual, I'd screen share and show you the whole thing. Because the way I wrote it was that it would work for blog posts. It would work for marketing. It'd be really easy to pull clips out. So now I'm able to write in a way that's very cross-channel. I can read a chapter, it becomes a podcast episode. You know, it's like there's so many ways to get good at that cross-functionality. But yeah, if people are just writing a book because they think that sounds cool or that makes them sound like more of an authority, like I would, you know, say there's way better ways to grow your capital than that. But if you really want to learn, if you really want to figure out what you think about something, if you really have something to say, I don't think there's a better way to learn how to think about it.
How about productivity? I mean, you're obviously prolific and habits are super important and part of your methods. What's some counterintuitive habit productivity advice that maybe people haven't heard in traditional productivity books and habit books that may be influenced by Ayurveda or whatever? Like how do you do it? How do you be so prolific and love it? It looks like you're still having fun. Like
totally. I mean, and I'm at that fun part, I think, too, of company growth where I have someone that's running. We use a visionary integrator, the traction business model or rocket fuel business model. So I now have an integrator. She's an integrator in training. So I'm still taking on a bit more of getting her up to speed in terms of how she needs to be thinking as integrator. And that bought me a lot of freedom to really take the seat of visionary and creator and get really clear on like what is the best use of my time. Like where do I need to be? And at times I felt like really insanely narcissistic. Like I really want to learn this. But now what I've seen as from following that desire, and Tantra and yoga teaches us this really deep path of following desire. We teach that in Master of You as well. Like get really clear at high level desire and operate at that level. Like really high level desire. What do you really want to know? What do you really want to be doing? And that's more or less how I operate my life. And because I've been a lifestyle entrepreneur for, 20 years, and it's all been based on, I mean, a lot of our marketing 10 years ago was based on like, you guys want this lifestyle that I have. Totally narcissistic. Like, look, I've got, but it made me really pay attention to what is truly important. And what I find is that like all these things save time and money. Like all the things we teach and do save time and money. So you end up with more time and you end up with more money. I mean, even if you look at eating half the amount of time, like you're spending half the amount of time with food. You're spending half the amount on food, and usually you eat way better food. I mean, you know this inside out. Like, wow, all of a sudden you see how other people waste money on food, and it's like, in time. So to me, just things like that, it's more of like, what do you not need to do as much that you think you need to do? And even yoga, meditation, like the way I was trained, it was like, you just spend an hour a day on the cushion, an hour a day on the mat. And I'm like, maybe you can get it done in 15 minutes and get into a brainwave state that you're aiming for and get the kind of, whatever, agility, flexibility, oxygenation in your cells. So there's those things. I will share a secret though. And that's this. This is my little, this is a syringe. You guys who are not watching, it's a syringe that it's like a 10 milliliter syringe and it has aged urine in it. And I snort it. And it is probably the fastest way for those of you who like want to see what thinking is on a higher level. Like there's really, and this is one of the weirdest things about urine therapy. It's that there's a text that's roughly dated to about 500 years ago. We don't really know how long the oral tradition was before, but it's basically on urine therapy. And it's like, if you want to be smarter, start using your own urine. And from what I can tell in the research, the reason why snorting urine is so effective, and I know this is totally grossing most of the people out listening, and I get it. It's like you've been trained into disgust with urine. We all have. Habits are cultural. We've been trained that this is a waste product and that is disgusting. But it's interesting to know how other cultures have used it. And from what I can tell, the olfactory bulbs are a gate. They're the way that certain molecules within the urine are the gateway into the cerebrospinal fluid that starts to decalcify the pineal gland. And so when your pineal gland is operating the way it's designed, like you are a visionary, you're super clear. You feel, this is the interesting thing with all the habits, is all the positive stressor habits, is you get really into a relaxed, focused flow state. So I don't know how I could do any of this without those. You know what I mean? Like it would just seem like stress.
That's awesome. Wow. What do you have for the people? Like maybe something for people to check out, maybe something for the person who is on their wellness journey and they're just curious of their own life, and then something for a wellness pro who's looking to follow some of your methods and techniques.
Yeah. So, okay, for the wellness pros, if they want sort of the career business path, because we teach a really specific results-focused business path that's like lifestyle-based, yogahealer.com/wellness-pros. That'll be a good workshop. For those who want to learn more about Ayurveda, yogahealer.com/Ayurveda, which is AYURVEDA. Those are probably the best places to start. And for anyone who just wants to talk to us, I mean, that's really it's something that we offer. We offer these body goal sessions, but you can just sign up with it doesn't matter what you sign up for or what you want, but yogahealer.com/body-goals. What we have found with these, we've done these body goal sessions for close to a decade. And what we find is that we help people really start to just make a list of stuff that's going on. And we help them connect the dots, right? Of like, this is what all of these symptoms are saying. And then we can, at that point, we have a lot of free courses because I'm huge on free education and I'm huge on making a lot of money, but like, why not do both? So we can, at that point you into just a more targeted free course. And we just finished, we just finished the P guide, which is a beginner's guide for anyone who's like, what the heck is she talking about? I just want to know more about that. yogahealer.com/PPEE-book, BOOK. I think it's an interesting thing just to know, like, you should know about fasting. Well, you should also know about P and how other people are using it and why. I mean, so many, oh my gosh, chronic conditions that are just so fast to solve with urine. It's kind of bizarre, particularly skin stuff. But you can improve your eyesight, your hearing, you can improve your digestion, your microbiomes of your physiology are really fed by the stuff that's in pee. So just to get up to speed, I like to take a very scientific approach of like, understand why this works. So all of these things will have a component of that. That's
awesome. Well, that's Cate Stillman. She's from yogahealer.com. Any final words for the people?
Yeah, I really want to speak to people that are on the entrepreneurial journey. I think there's and I'm sure I'm not the first person to say this on the podcast, but I think there's like the myth that it should be easy. And I think there's a myth that you should be making a lot of money, or you might not know what you're doing. You might not really be an expert. And I would just, reflect that like life is all about pulsation. So there's going to be highs and lows, but always come back to who you're helping and why, and be helpful. And the more you focus on that and like what those people really need, in my experience, like you will always have some really good work in front of you.
That's awesome. Well, Cate, thanks for coming on the show. We really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure, Chris. Thanks for having me.
And that's a wrap for this episode of LMS Cast. Did you enjoy that episode? Tell your friends and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. And I've got a gift for you over at LifterLMS.com/gift. Go to LifterLMS.com/gift. Keep learning, keep taking action, and I'll see you in the next episode.